everybody, and welcome to Commodity Culture, where our goal is to make you a better investor in the commodities sector. My name is Jesse Day, and on today's show, it's part 2 of my epic interview with Tom Luongo, a former research chemist, anarcho-libertarian, and Austrian economist whose work can be found on Zero Hedge, Newsmax Media, and more. He is the founder of the Gold, Goats, and Guns blog. Today we're going to discuss the potential collapse of the UK and why it might be entering a debt-death spiral, the political and economic conundrum faced by my home country of Canada, whether he's seeing value in emerging markets and other non-Western jurisdictions, and so much more. Strap yourselves in for part 2 of my conversation with Tom Luongo. UK, this is something you brought up earlier. I recently had our mutual friend Alex Craner on the show. He talked about what he called the coming collapse of Great Britain. Ray Dalio has also recently said in a Financial Times article that the UK could be entering, quote, a debt-death spiral. I know you've been covering that part of the world for a while. What are you seeing in the UK right now?
I'm seeing very desperate attempts, I believe, I may be wrong about this, but I think that the UK is trying to figure out a way, or at least the Bank of England figure out a way of gaining control back over the U.S. Treasury market that they lost when the U.S. went to SOFR over and LIBOR ended. It may be this FMX brokerage and clearing and London clearing of securities issue that John Cornyn brought up to Scott Bessent at the confirmation hearing, spearheaded by Howard Lutnick, who's supposed to be our Commerce Secretary. There's something about that whole story that stinks to high heaven, and Alex and I talked about it on a couple of different podcasts now, and the more I dig into it, and the more I talk about it, people are coming out of the woodwork to add color to this, to try and figure out what's going on, and we still don't have a really good answer for it. What I'll say is this. The biggest buyer of U.S. Treasuries over the last 3 years since Powell started raising interest rates is the Bank of England and its subsidiaries. You can look at the TIC report. You can do the same work that I did. This is publicly available knowledge, and you can organize the buying however you want. I organized it to fit my thesis. I think I'm correct, but they have a big pile of U.S. Treasuries. Both directly and of course indirectly by the central banks that they have a lot of, and markets that they have a lot of influence in. And I'm now thinking specifically about Hong Kong, Singapore, the Caymans, Bermuda, Luxembourg, which houses Euroclear, Canada, Ireland. These are all in many ways subsidiaries of the Bank of England or the ECB, which at this point I would argue is roughly the same thing. What I think I talked earlier about the fork action that Trump was putting on the UK with Elon Musk and all that, and I believe that the City of London is his target. The target is split City of London off from Europe, and basically do the divide and rule play that the British are so good at doing to everybody else. You have a choice. You can go with them, or you can come with us. But if you come with us, you're going to submit because Wall Street's in charge. We're in charge. You guys work for us now. And if you choose Europe, you're going to die. And the clearest inferential piece of inferential data that supports this, on top of everything else that's actually happening, is that Nigel Farage was not allowed into the inauguration. He was denied. And the older I get, the more I watch Nigel and I review all of his, who I've been a champion of it in the past. I've watched Nigel operate. It's very clear to me that he's City of London through and through. And that's where his first loyalties lie. He is Don Trump-Leone. I need you to get that through your head. He is running this like a mob boss would. So you will be given various simple choices. You will be given offers that you cannot refuse. Or you'll wake up with a horse's head in your bed. That's where we are. And the Prime Minister of Denmark got that earful the other day. And we're going to buy Greenland. Now, the interesting part about it is something that's come out recently. I heard in the last, I found out recently, or somebody uncovered for me, was that actually the British have right of first refusal to buy Greenland if Denmark tries to sell it. We'll see how that plays out. So the big questions, again, I go back to what I said earlier. Will he be the most consequential human being since Genghis Khan? It all depends on whether he's trying to save City of London and the crown or destroy it. That's the open-ended question that I've come to. And that's what I'm watching. So I don't remember what your initial question was, Jesse. I just know that I needed to go off on that tangent.
Hey guys, just a quick break to hear from today's sponsor, ARC, Silver Gold Osmium. They offer personalized service and competitive prices with no minimum purchase for silver, gold, platinum, or osmium. Here's just some of the comments left on this YouTube channel about ARC SGO and owner Ian Everard. Have bought from ARC, good source and price. I cannot say enough good about Ian and his company. He is the most honest individual I could find in order to buy precious metals. If you are looking to buy precious metals, I recommend Ian at ARC Silver. He is a straight shooter. So go to arcsgo.com and contact Ian Everard today at 307-264-9441 or by email at ian@arcsgo.com, and make sure to tell him that Commodity Culture sent you. No, it answered the question completely. I do want to shift to my home country of Canada for a moment. I'm actually here on vacation right now after attending the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference. It's lovely to be back, but definitely also as a place to live, I prefer my new fatherland of Serbia much more in terms of the taxes, cost of living, the political situation, society at large, on and on and on. Right now, the Liberal Party seeks to legitimize itself after Trudeau's disastrous run. Mark Carney stepped up, Christina Freeland. There's various creatures coming out of the gutter to try to take that role. The cost of living is totally unaffordable for your average person. I mean, it's completely insane. Taxes are oppressive, and what you get for your taxes is nothing. Literally, you need to wait in the emergency room for 13 hours to see somebody after somebody's hit you over the head with a baseball bat or something like that. That's the medical system here.
It's not much better here, by the way. I spent evenings in the in the emergency room here in the United States with my sister-in-law literally like dying of a brain tumor, and we had to don't even get me started. Don't even get started. It's awful.
Wow. Well, Serbia has an excellent medical system, despite being an ex-Yugoslavian country. Infrastructure is in shambles, and it's a very inconvenient place to live. There's many downsides, but fantastic medical system, very cheap, and you get things done on time. However, Trump, as we mentioned earlier, is now threatening to impose tariffs on Canada, saying it should be the 51st state. I'm wondering how you see all this play out, because we've got Pierre Poilievre, who's apparently going to become the next prime minister. It seems like that's all but being announced. People seem to believe that he's a shoo-in. I don't know. I mean, I'd rather wait until election day comes and goes to put any 100% stamp of approval on things. However, there's been talks that he's actually a globalist as well. He's been saying some ridiculous things, like giving this big speech that went viral where he said, this woman who was working in a restaurant came out to me. She said, "Mr. Poilievre, you have to be prime minister." And he said, thank you for the support." She said, "No, you have to be the prime minister because I'm working 3 jobs right now just to make ends meet." As if he was going to be able to change that by becoming prime minister. Pierre's prime minister, I can quit 2 of my jobs and go back to living a normal life. I wonder how you see the political situation playing out in Canada. Is this an art of the deal with Trump? Is he serious about making Canada the 51st state? And what would it take for that to actually happen? Because I can tell you, where I am in the west coast of Canada, British Columbia, these people will never ever go out and protest against governments. They're very, I think, weak-minded in general, very far left. But I think they would riot if this was actually going through. So I'm curious what your take is on that.
What I think is that Trump is trying to right a lot of wrongs of the crown. Canada is still crown land. I think he's targeting a whole lot of the Commonwealth. That's what I think. I could have just a hammer and everything looks like a nail, but I don't think I'm wrong on this one. And I'm getting other people who have been skeptical of my arguments about this coming to me and saying, dude, I think you're right. And people I really respect about this who have come to me, and I've had long conversations privately about these things. Like, this is not something I always and I think Trump is dead serious. He wants the Canadian oil. He wants to free Canada from these globalists. He didn't just go to the WEF and throw a bag of poop on the floor for no damn reason. He knows what he's dealing with here. And I just, part of me is like, yeah, that's y'all are cute about putting up a fight because you're Canadians, and I think that's good. I think it's good to punch you in the mouth, and then all of a sudden we find out who's actually a Western Canadian hockey defenseman and is willing to drop the gloves and do the thing, and who's the 5'9" center from the Quebec Major Junior League, right? Who's the you know what I mean? Like, and who's the guy who's the perimeter player, right? So, old hockey guy. It works for me. I get it. Polyev comes across as one of those guys. Danielle Smith comes across as a Western Canadian brawler. And she was invited to Mar-a-Lago. And Alberta's the key. Alberta and the oil are the key. And Davos thinks that they're and the Crown think that they are going to. Let me try and explain to you. The Crown, as of right now, is captured by continental Europe. Okay, City of London is trying to be forked. Charles works for the globalists. Okay, what if Charles dies in the next 6 months? He's sick, clearly sick. So, and William takes over. It ain't going to be Harry. It was never supposed to be Charles in the first place. Liz never wanted Charles to be king. That's why she hung on so long. She was hoping to outlive her son. So there's something else going on there. And I go over there in order to try and explain what's happening in Canada. And I don't have a really good feel for Canadian politics. I've got prominent friends and prominent patrons who are Canadian. And I have slowly but surely plugged myself into what's happening in Alberta politics. And Alberta politics is very, very, very much ready to tell Ottawa to go scratch. And if Alberta goes, Saskatchewan's going. If Saskatchewan goes, Manitoba's going. And then after that, does Ottawa even matter? Because without Canadian oil and Canadian uranium and, frankly, Canadian wheat, what does Toronto really have? Like, it's shitlib central. It's Gainesville, Florida on steroids, and it'll collapse. Well, really, Ottawa's probably closer to that because it's not that big. They're relatively the same size. But my point being is that there's the opportunity here to unlock all of this, right? I was talking to a guy the other day about this. Who was I talking to about this? Who's from St. Catharines? And like, it used to be the Golden Horseshoe, right? Of all this manufacturing and all of this great industry. It's all gone. It's all gone. And, Canadians, I think, are ready in general to rise up and say enough is enough. And yeah, Polyev, I don't trust him. Like, it's the same problem that you have in the Tories over in Britain. It's the same thing you have with the older guard Republicans here in the United States. These people all work for globalists. They're all compromised, either because they're on the Epstein list or the Manila envelope quotient or MEQ is really freaking high, and none of them can pass the dead hooker live boy test. All of those things that I talked about, all those metaphors I invoke all the time. They're everywhere, and they're all dying off though. They're all being removed. You're watching the end of all this, and I've been saying for years, they have to make these Davosian jackasses have to make their move now, because all of their high-level functioning quislings are all 85 years old. They're not going to survive. I mean, Mitch McConnell's done. He shouldn't even be in the Senate. He can barely walk. It's elder abuse. Not that I have any, have any sympathy for Mitch McConnell. I mean, seriously, but it's the same thing. We don't find out that the House rep from Texas she didn't show up to Congress for 6 months because she was in a nursing home, and yet somehow she wasn't. So she was a vote that they couldn't count on. So we had a fake majority in the House. This it's everywhere, and it all needs to come crashing down. And Trump knows that he doesn't have real majorities in the legislature to do what he wants. That's why he's going to operate via executive order. And that's why he's going to use tariffs, sanctions, threats, and everything else, because he doesn't have any other options until 2027, when he can get a real Congress in and get a durable advantage and a durable majority in both the Senate and the House. And then you're going to see real change. Just imagine what he can get done in the next 2 years. And so Canada's going to knuckle under because they don't have any choice. Pierre Poilievre is going to virtue signal for votes, and Doug Ford is going to, do his best impression of Doug Emhoff. And then he's going to go slink, or the Colombian president, and then he's going to slink back to his office, and he's going to sign a decree that, we'll do it, whatever Trump asks for. Because the United States is done caring about what other people think and whatever other people want, period. Then all of a sudden, it's not negotiations. With Russia over the war, easy. It's an easy solve. We don't want to lob nukes at Russia. They don't want to lob nukes at us. And in Trump's words, and Ukraine's a shithole. Hey, let's stop killing each other. Let's stop the killing, and let's get back to making babies and rebuilding the world that these people have destroyed.
Last time I had you on, we spoke about emerging markets. You said that's not an area that you're bullish on. Is that still the case at this point in time? Because, over 70% of global stock allocation is currently in U.S. markets. A lot of people point to that number as being way too high. Are you looking anywhere outside of the U.S., or do you think the new Trump era means that it's best to remain invested mostly in the United States?
In the near term, U.S. blue chips are not going to be the only game in town. There's going to be rallies in blue chip indices around the world. We've already started to see it. We've seen it in Nikkei. We're seeing it right now in Germany and the UK. The Eurostoxx 50 is outperforming so far this year. The Eurostoxx 50 and the DAX, German DAX, are outperforming the Dow, for example. Why? Because their bonds are selling off and the money's just rotating into stocks. We're getting a move into a flight to quality, a la Martin Armstrong. That's not quality, but tangible assets. Well, flight to quality, but tangible assets. At the same time, we are getting a bit of a safe haven bid into U.S. Treasuries as well, right? The long end of the yield curve is done selling off. It looks like it's done selling off for a little bit of time now, which tells me that Powell needs to cut rates, but I'm in the minority on that. So if I were emerging markets, until we're done with the transformation of American markets and American tax policy and American and the American regulatory environment, and Trump is done freezing the spending and freezing the departments and auditing everything I said before the election before the inauguration said he was going to do. He's doing, and more. He's doing more than I thought he would. Some of the money that he wanted to cut, they can't get through yet, but they're working on it. Like, it's clear that, they're going to get a lot of the spending off the table. With the amount of QT that's happening this year on the Fed's balance sheet, it's about $750 billion are going to roll off the Fed's balance sheet this year in U.S. Treasuries. That alleviates a lot of the budget, the built-in budget deficit, right? Because those are Treasuries that do not have to be reissued, so it's not going to add to so we can run a $750 billion deficit, and the net amount of U.S. debt in circulation will not change because the Fed's rolling $750 billion off its balance sheet this year. And most of that comes off in the first 6 months, by the way. So all this is a long-winded way of saying I just don't see how emerging markets at this point in this type of uncertainty and realignment, I just don't see why people would be, looking to invest overseas. There are some markets that are moving, but I would look at the ones that are adding to their stock of U.S. Treasuries as reserve balances. I noticed, for example, Indonesia has started buying Treasuries again. I don't know why that is, but I would imagine it's because they're running they're running a trade surplus, and therefore, they're buying U.S. Treasuries with the trade surplus. That would be good for their markets. There's not a lot of them, but I would go through the TIC report and whatever markets you're seeing there, and that's what I would do. And I don't mean Europe, by the way. They're buying to defend the euro and to defend their bond markets. I mean, outside of the Eurozone and its adjacent partners at the Bank of England. Or that means all the countries that I listed off earlier, right? But any, in the quote unquote rest of the world category and Asia Pacific, meaning not Eurozone, if you've got a country that seems to be adding significant amount of treasuries to their balance sheet, their national balance sheet, they're probably running a trade surplus with the United States. And because of that, their stock markets should be doing well. And if there's not correlation between those two things, then I would probably say there's something else going on, right? So look for a correlation. And if you see one, great. Then you can go there.
What are your thoughts on Argentina and how the scorecard so far you give Javier Milei for what he's done in the country? It also looks like Trump has been talking to Milei. Do you think there's going to be an alliance there? Give us your thoughts on Argentina and how they've developed since he became president.
Yeah, Milei is a guy that I want to believe in. I just don't yet. But maybe he's doing. I haven't been following Argentina closely enough. It would probably be unfair of me to really comment beyond that. Yeah, let's just leave it there. I don't really have a good answer for you there. Something about Milei stinks, and I don't like it, but I could be wrong.
Very interesting. What about Trump's talks with Bukele over in El Salvador? Do you think that bodes well for, people are saying that's going to be bullish for Bitcoin. Perhaps he's talking to him about establishing a Bitcoin reserve and learning how they did it over there in El Salvador. What are your thoughts there?
I think Cynthia Lummis is serious about introducing a bill to actually build the strategic Bitcoin reserve. I think Trump is serious because he issued an executive order to that effect. Now it's going to be up to Congress, who are full of Davosian catamites, to pass what he wants. So with that said, yeah, I think it's a good thing that he's talking to Bukele over in El Salvador. Absolutely. I'm very bullish on Bitcoin. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I am. I don't know if it, I look at it. I've been watching it all day today. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. Now got hit for $6,000 this morning, and now it's back to nearly 102 again. It was trading down below 99 a couple of hours ago.
Well, let's talk about gold and silver as well, because I know you're one of the seemingly few people out there in the public space that believes in both gold and Bitcoin. Usually it's one or the other. There's a few people who venture into both realms. I personally venture into both realms. I'm overweight Bitcoin, but also big believer in physical gold and silver. What are your thoughts on the gold market, where it's at present, and silver as well, because silver is a very hyperbolic commodity in terms of how people talk about it online and in interviews. Every week somebody's talking about silver's going to $50 and it's about to happen. There's all these headlines. Silver's about to go to 50.
Yeah, I've been hearing that since 2013 after it went to 50 and then collapsed, right? Gold technically put in the highest weekly closing price of all time, not this past week, but the week before. Gold is on its way first to $3,000. It'll do the Jim Sinclair round number bingo thing at 3,000. Then it's on its way to $3,500 or $3,600. It's already I'm going to sound Marxist. It's history, right? Okay, in that respect, silver. From what I'm hearing, I read a great short article tweet from Bob Coleman the other day about how tight the silver market is right now in order of delivery of London good for delivery bars is. And it's so bad that that the dealers are melting down old coinage because they can get better prices on London good for delivery bars than they can sell in the silver. And there's no supply of silver coins. That just screams to me. Now, even if Bob is overselling that, now Bob doesn't tend to oversell things. To be fair, I'm saying even if Bob is overselling it, because I think it's a big tweet, and I think the first 2/3 of it were really, really spot on. Then it started to get a little speculative. Fine, if he's wrong about the speculative part, and I'm just being intellectually honest here, I'm just like setting up ground rules. I'm not saying he is right or wrong. I'm just saying if he's wrong, even that is telling you, yeah, silver's getting ready for a huge breakout. Someone clearly goes broke if silver goes above $35 an ounce. They're trying to defend 31 right now. It's pretty obvious. But silver for different reasons than gold. Gold, I just don't see silver until somebody remonetizes silver. I just think silver is an industrial metal. And I think it's an important industrial metal. I think it may be the most important industrial metal next to copper. I still think it's an industrial metal. And so this gold to silver ratio is not telling us anything in the way I see it, which is I have a long-term trend line to the gold to silver ratio that I trade, that I analyze the market against. We're not at the top. We're not at the bottom. We're right on the long-term trend line. So, and I've also noted over, the more I look at it, the gold to silver ratio tends to peak or trough at major geopolitical events. Now, are we in that moment? Is Trump a big geopolitical event? Well, so far the markets are not telling us that's the case. But are we setting up for that? Sure. Is gold about to break out and silver is going to be suppressed, thereby sending the gold to silver ratio to the moon? Which at that point, like if you're not massively overweight silver, you're an idiot. What I always tell people is that when the ratio is above the long-term trend line, you should be buying more silver than gold. And when it's below the long-term trend line, you should be buying more gold than silver, and just buy both and buy all of them. I'm agnostic because I don't believe that anything is a solution to I don't think anybody knows what the solution to our problems are. I think that gold, Bitcoin, silver, Ripple, I think they're all going to be used. And I'm serious when I even say Ripple. I'm willing to put that into the conversation. And other things are going to be used to recapitalize the balance sheet of the United States. It's a very long conversation, but they're all on the table, and they can all be used as a tool to help recapitalize not only the United States, but literally the entire Western world. So that's likely to happen. And therefore, what I would suggest is everybody get out of their religious fervor over whatever asset they break one off to every night, and start thinking in terms of like how you make to think rationally about these things, because you have an opinion, but there are 9 other billion people on this planet who have an opinion too, and the markets, when allowed to, reflect the aggregate of what they think of these things. And it doesn't matter whether you think you're right because you've wrote, a couple of axioms down and went, oh yeah, well, if A, then B, then if B, then C, then therefore I'm right. Well, that's nice, Spurg boy. You may be right 100 years from now. Meanwhile, your children you didn't leave your children any wealth, and you missed out on some of the greatest bull markets in human history, like Bitcoin, for example. Peter Schiff. Like, it's unconscionable. It is. It's literally unconscionable to listen to these people talk. And, I'm not the only one saying it. Apparently, Peter got lambasted at New Orleans this year by Larry Leopard. And I was like, I didn't see it, but I heard about it. I know people who were there, and they're like, and it's like, it's reality. Like, there's absolutely no reason to be a religious fundamentalist about any of this stuff. Like, none. And if you're not sure of what to do, buy it all. And when the ratios are out of whack from one another, when you make your buy at the end of the month, buy that one versus that one. You don't have to love Bitcoin to put it in your portfolio. You don't have to love gold to put it in your portfolio. You don't have to love silver to put it in your portfolio. You don't have to love Apple to put it in your portfolio. You can be the biggest. If you don't think the CEO of Microsoft doesn't own Apple shares, you're out of your freaking mind. Of course he does. He's not stupid. So why should you be? And if anybody's telling you to be that it's only Bitcoin, and if not, then you're a bad person. No, he's the bad guy, not you. Period. Just put that person on ignore and move on with your life. I do.
Yeah, I think it's the gold holders and gold investors who need to hear that message the most, because I've noticed that it's mostly the toxic Bitcoin maximalist attitude that really pushes gold people away from the Bitcoin space and makes them hostile to it without doing any research into it. It's interesting because I was at the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference recently, and there were some veterans of the mining space on stage giving a talk, and the subject of Bitcoin came up, and they all hated it so ardently, and when they spoke about it, you could tell they knew absolutely nothing about it. It was shocking. I was like, you don't even know what Bitcoin is, and you're up here saying all these crazy things about it, and you're an incredibly intelligent person. That just shows how much emotions have kind of taken over that whole argument.
Yeah, no, they're completely triggered, and I used to, whenever I wrote about this, I doctored up the South Park meme, show me on the doll where Bitcoin touched you, and I'm like, I'll throw that out there every once in a while. I'm like, just shut up. Show me on the doll where Bitcoin touched you, and I'll go to therapy, get it out of your system, and go buy some. It's not hard. Like you can even buy leverage 2x longs and shorts against it now if you really want to. Like, have fun.
I want to end the discussion by opening the floor to you. Is there anything we haven't discussed that's front of mind right now that you think more people should be paying attention to?
Don't discount, in all of this geopolitical wrangling, don't discount a grand bargain over not only Ukraine, but the Middle East. That means don't discount that Trump doesn't settle the situation between Israel and Iran in a definitive way that a lot of people may not be happy with. Okay. And that's going to be the moment where a lot of people have to look in the mirror and decide what it is that they actually want and believe in, or what's their ultimate goal. I have watched a lot of good people in the geopolitical space become single issue voters or single issue commentators since October 7th and the attack on by Hamas. And it's beginning to remind me of, the Bitcoin maxis versus the gold bugs. It's beginning to remind me of something that is that's become toxic. And I hate to say that, but I am over my anti-Americanism, my disillusionment with what my country has become. Because my country has stood up now twice and said, we don't want this. Actually, they stood up 3 times and said, we don't want it. They just weren't allowed to weren't allowed to have it happen to them during the Biden junta. I firmly believe that Biden was not elected. He was selected. And, we are entering a period where there are no white knights, folks. The world is too broken. It's going to take some really uncomfortable actions by powerful people to right the world. That means Putin's done things that are not salutary. Netanyahu's done things that aren't salutary. I hate Netanyahu. I think he's vile. I think he's disgusting. Okay? But at the same time, there may be good that comes out of things that he has done, and I have to swallow my tongue practically in order to say that publicly. And same thing with Trump. Trump's going to do a lot of things that a lot of people aren't going to like, including his most ardent supporters. And they're going to have to get comfortable with that. Now, the people in the center of the MAGA movement have no problem with this. It's the people on the edges. It's the libertarians that have been brought into the thing that are going to have, that are having the biggest problem right now, because they're constantly looking for the thing that is going to prove that they were right all along, because their coping mechanism with an evil world, with a fallen world, is to point fingers at the other guy and say, see, it's that's the problem right there, as opposed to understanding that they've really taken themselves off the game board, and they don't have answers, and they don't have solutions. They just have criticisms. And while many of those criticisms may be valid, it's cope, because you're not strong enough to actually fight for what needs to be fought, fight the war that needs to be fought. Trump is putting together a cabinet of fucking warriors. Like, as Marcellus Wallace put it in Pulp Fiction, I'm not allowed to use the entire phrase, but the hard pipe hitters to come in and clean this shit up. And it's what needs to be done at this point, because the people you're fighting will use every ounce of your humanity against you to get you to make the wrong move. And there comes a point where you just have to keep punching them in the mouth until they submit. And if they don't submit, then you have to strip them of all their assets. And all of their wealth is ill-gotten in the first place. They got it through the manipulation of the immorality. If you don't believe in government, then they use the immorality of government to strip people of their assets through currency arbitrage and mispricing of risk and assets and everything else. Excuse me, they're mass murderers. Like, you are morally within your right to strip them of all their assets, take them, and rebuild the world with them. And that's the way we have to look at this. And I made my peace with that part of the quote unquote libertarian ethos in 2010. I always said I may be an anarchist philosophically, but I'm no pacifist. I'm too Sicilian for that. You know what I mean? So that's what we have to realize in all the context of everything we're talking about today. We have to remind ourselves that, this is a war, and you're going to do things and have to advocate for things that aren't necessarily good. But as long as you know you're doing it and know where the limit is and know why you're doing it, and yeah, you may cross over the line at times, and then you'll apologize for it. You'll try and make amends, and you'll move on. And none of us are pure. You get over yourself, and let's fix the world.
This has been an incredible conversation. I always love chatting with you. So happy to be able to do a 2-part epic interview with you. Before I do let you go, tell us about the Gold, Goats, and Guns blog, your Patreon, anywhere else you want to direct people online who want to learn more about your work.
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter at TFL1728. We have a Patreon service, Patreon/Gold, Goats, and Guns. You can sign up either for the twice weekly market reports and the private chat server and any private blogs I may do. Or you can sign up for the monthly newsletter, which is a kind of a standard, investment style newsletter with a bespoke portfolio, and myself and Dexter White write exclusive material for that, in which where we really kind of like look ahead as to where we're going. The blog at this point at tomluongo.me or goldgoatsandguns.com. I haven't written for it in a couple of months now, but that's where I cross post all the podcasts and everything else. We have a podcast I try to do for 5 or 6 a month. I don't always succeed. This month I've succeeded, so we'll see. We'll try and keep that pace up. And if I'm not writing, then I should be doing podcasts and have, try to have what I think are the best people on for the things that we're trying to talk about.
Great. Well, I'll put links to all of that in the description below. Thank you once again, Tom, for coming on. It's been a blast.
No problem. Jesse, thank you very much for the invitation. And let's hope that 2025 is difficult and awesome all at the same time.
And thank you for joining us today. This episode is brought to you by ARC Silver, Gold, Osmium for all your precious metals needs. Head to arcsgo.com and contact owner Ian Everard today at 307-264-9441 or by email at ian@arcsgo.com. Make sure to tell him the Commodity Culture sent you, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.